Now, when spring and autumn is around the corner, depending on which side of the hemisphere you are, it is a great time to start making quiche again. And for the occasion, I thought I would be running a complete workshop on how to make a famous quiche Lorraine. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the theory of quiche, the history, the components, what you need to know, the do's and don'ts, plus a practice session where we're going to be choosing our quiche pan, making the shortcrust by hand, the filling, choosing the garnish, cooking, baking time, and serving. All what you need to never fail the quiche again is right here. Let's go. Now let's start the workshop with a little bit of theory, of course, and the name Quiche Lorraine has got some meaning. Quiche used to be called differently, it used to be called Kuchen, a bit of a Germanic name. It means cake, and Lorraine simply means the region. So it's a region near Luxembourg in eastern France. So when we hear about a Quiche Lorraine, it is a quiche coming from the Lorraine region, so it's a regional dish. That is all there is to it. Now, for the Quiche Lorraine nowadays, all what you need to know is that it is made with three core components. The first one is a savory short crust. The second one is the filling, and that is called Migaine. In the Lorraine terms, it's kind of a nickname. It's not called filling, it's called Migaine. And the Migaine, or the filling, is made only with cream, whole egg, salt, and pepper. That's it. The basic version has got no milk into it, nothing else. For the garnish, it is smoked pork belly, aka bacon. There is no cheese, there's no herbs or whatever. I know for some it may sound boring, but the original version is really just with these three elements. Now the reason for that is that the quiche Lorraine has been around since the 16th century, and it was a very simple affair. To me, it really sounds like the same story as the pizza in Italy. Something very accessible for any folks out there back in the days that could be making. Even bacon actually was not there in the beginning. The very original quiche was made only with the cream and the eggs, and then some luxury has been added with some bacon. But that's it for the theory. Now what I want to show you here is more the practical bits when we're going to be making the quiche Lorraine, because we're going to be making it from scratch, from beginning till end, and we're going to be starting here, of course, with choosing a quiche pan, as you will see, is very important. Now, quiche pans, are they all the same? Well, not exactly, and it pays to know the difference between one or the other, because that is really the difference between sometimes success and failure. The main things you need to know when you choose a quiche pan, if you have a choice, maybe at home if you're buying a new one, is first the material that they're made of. So metal like this is the best, as it will conduct and transfer the heat. It gets very hot, and it really allows your crust to cook properly at the bottom and on the side. If you go for a ceramic dish, a porcelain dish, or an earthenware like this is going to struggle to diffuse the heat and to cook the crust, because this is the important. A lot of time with these soggy bottom issues because we're using these kinds of pans. So when you use these, most likely you're going to have to blind bake your short crust. More on that later. That's the first element. The second thing you need to know is the height of your pan. If you go, and you buy a pan, you may see on a magazine, oh, you know what, I've seen these very chunky, they are great, I'm going to buy this one, it's very, very high profile. Well, you can do that as long as you know that this is going to take longer to cook than this one, which is exactly the same kind of circumference, but it's a narrow profile, okay? So be always mindful of this little kind of detail. In France, what is the default? We use these kinds of size, 26 to 28 centimeters, as a low profile quiche pan like this. And typically it is made in a metal pan because, as you would see, it does not require any blind baking. But talking about blind baking now, let's go ahead and make that short crust and talk about it. So as a recap before we begin, let's remember that all what you need to know about quiche pan is that they are not all the same, and depending on the type of quiche pan that you use, being a high profile, a metal or ceramic or porcelain, you may have to blind bake your crust, you may have to adjust the cooking time and the temperature. That's all. With that in mind, you can use any quiche pan that you want, as long as you know about this. When it comes to the short crust, I'm going to give you here my favorite, which is made with 250 grams of flour, 125 grams of butter, some water, I'll tell you about the measurement, one whole egg, and salt. Common ingredients you're going to find here. The only question you may have is this: what types of flour should I use? I'm using an all-purpose flour here because it's one that I use all the time. It doesn't have too much gluten into it. Why am I mentioning this? A flour with lots of protein, aka gluten, is going to be good for any preparation or baking preparation, anything you make that needs to stretch or rise. So, puff pastry, croissant, choux pastry, that sort of things needs a flour that's got lots of elasticity, and because when it's got gluten, it's very elastic. When you stretch it, it's very elastic, and you need that so things to rise and doesn't break off. In the instance of a quiche here, or a cake, you can use a flour with a very low gluten or protein amount. And that is usually found in the type of flour that is referred to as cake flour. You're more than welcome to use cake flour when you make a short crust. What is the incidence of using a canned flour? It's going to minimize the shrinking effect in your crust. And I'm sure you've experienced this, you've seen it online. The shrinkage is a thing that is happening because you knead your dough too much or because there is a bit too much gluten into your flour. So when you make the dough like this, it's going to tend to become elastic. When you cook it, because it's elastic, it's going to start to shrink back. Okay, so here I'm going to show you what to do to avoid the shrinkage. Let's go. We're going to be making our short crust by hand. A lot of people tend to think, oh my God, it's too difficult. There's nothing hard about this. You use a large bowl like this. I found it is the easier way, okay? And you're going to be washing your hands thoroughly. So 2 minutes with soap, a good scrub, because we're going to use our hand to do that. A little gesture. So the first thing, we're going to take our flour and we're going to sift it. Very important. Pass it through a sieve. Once you have your flour, we're going to take our cubes of butter. So this is cold butter, okay? So it was in the fridge and it needs to be cold because we're going to have to work the flour with our warm hands. We need to make a sandy mixture. So what we do, we take this flour, we squeeze it in our hands like that. So you can go fast, you can go slow, and you can use the tip of your finger like this to really press the butter to make sure it's kind of, going to that mixture. So very quickly, I'm going to keep on working this until it gets a little bit sandy. All right, so when I'm saying sandy is that kind of crumble-like mixture. There's still some pieces of butter, you can see here, that I need to kind of scrub. But look at this mixture. So you can do this, the sanding process. You see, you take your dough and it's like you're sanding away. Okay, so when you've got the right amount, here it's fine like this. You don't have to go too far. We're going to prepare the liquid. So I'm going to put this on the side. Okay, make sure it's nice and sandy. And we're going to prepare the liquid, which is the water mixed with the eggs and salt. Now for the liquid, that recipe uses a technique is very simple. First you're going to need an electronic scale. This is set on millimeters. Okay, you can use this on ounces if you want, and there's a mode that can change. And all what we're going to do here, we're going to first take the whole egg and we're going to put it in. And we're going to check the weight of that egg. Doesn't matter what eggs you use, any egg is fine. I've got 53 ml. All what we want here is about 80 ml of water. 80 ml, sorry, of liquid. So I've got 53, and I need to have roughly enough water to reach 80. Now, depending on the flour you have, you may have to have a little tiny bit of more water, but typically it's fine. Might go over 80 because it's hard by hand like this. Boom, 80. Okay, I've got my 80 milliliter, is fine. I'm gonna add the salt that I've got on here. And my personal touch with something is on the baking world, I'm going to add a little bit of sugar as well. So salt and sugar. It's going to give a nice balanced taste. And from here, you're going to beat the whole lot. So now that we have our liquid, we're ready to mix it in. But of course, by hand, it's going to be extremely messy. And we're not going to bother. We're going to use now a spoon, a wooden spoon. And what I'm going to do here is just to kind of pour my wet mixture here. So this is the whole egg with everything. And then with a spoon, I'm going to first work that, avoid dirtying my hand that I've just re-washed again. And you're going to mix this until you start to have some kind of dough that forms. And only once we've got that base dough that is not too wet, we're going to go back and use our hands. You can see it start to form in a kind of a dough there. Okay? So I'm not going to cut the camera. I want you to see the whole process. So there's no trick. Or some people say, oh, he's tricking. No, I'm not. I'm just making a dough. So look. From here, I'm going to start to gather everything. The key to how things shrink, okay, is the more you work your dough, and the more elastic it's going to be. So as soon as it's ready like this, we're going to wrap it and let it to rest. So remember, as you've seen, I've hardly kneaded the dough at all. I've kind of gathered everything together, and now I've got that nice consistency. You can see my finger in here, it's nice and soft. I've got a plastic wrap under here. I'm gonna kind of slightly flatten this in preparation for the rolling afterwards. And that needs to rest at least an hour. Typically 2 hours is better, but if you're short on time, 1 hour minimum. So I'm wrapping it up so there's no taste from the fridge, and I'm gonna place this in the fridge for 1 or 2 hours. So now that the shortcrust is resting in the fridge, we have time to talk about the filling, aka the Migaine. What are the measurements that you need to know? Very simple. The traditional quiche Lorraine uses 1 whole egg per 100 milliliters of cream. I'm choosing here this dish for us. This is a 24 centimeters, so the inside is 24 centimeters, the outside is 26 centimeters, which is a standard size for a quiche pan. And the height on that one is 3 centimeters. A high profile one like this one I was showing has got very straight edge and the bottom is very thin. Therefore, this is 3.5 centimeters high, and that can go up to 4 centimeters, which is a lot for this very thick kind of quiche. The narrow ones are 2.5 centimeters high. And it doesn't sound like lots, but trust me, when you use the filling and you feel the pan, the cooking time and temperature can vary greatly. So for this one, I want to show you the blind baking. I'm using the porcelain. Remember, porcelain does not diffuse the heat very well, so we're gonna have to blind bake. In terms of measurement, I'm using 3 eggs with 300 milliliters of cream. This is a heavy cream with 35% fat, and I'm going to be using salt and pepper to season, and that's it. And now let's talk about the garnish. So for the quiche Lorraine, typically in France, we use the poitrine de porc fumée, which means typically it's a smoked pork belly, aka bacon. This is pretty clean. Now my local shop decided to slice this, which is really not convenient because in France we have this kind of matchstick kind of looking thing. I'll show you afterwards. But that's a smoked bacon, so this is the kind of thing we use for the quiche. But you can also use something like this, which is the Italian style pancetta, which is a pork belly that has been cured, okay, dried, cured, seasoned and salted. It resembles a bit of a raw ham, that you get when a prosciutto or an Italian or Spanish kind of ham. And if you pan fry this a little bit, that doesn't going to have the same texture and flavor profile than the smoked bacon. So the classic is the smoked bacon, but if you want to change, to be honest, it's absolutely not a problem. Let's look at the types of cut we typically use. Now, when it comes to cutting the bacon for a quiche Lorraine, typically it is done like this. These are the famous lardons. You must have heard this in some American or English term. Oh, cut the bacon into lardons. Lardons are just like large matchstick-like pieces of bacon. But this is the pancetta. This is not what I want. So that's the cut that it should be like. But the guy from the shop decided to slice the smoked bacon. So when I cut it into the kind of lardon size, I've got these very annoying thin pieces. It's not the end of the world, but I'm going to have to be very careful when I'm pan frying them not to overcook them. So it is better to have these kinds of blocks like this. It's much better. And also for the bite, when you're in the kitchen, you bite into this, it's kind of better than the flat one. But again, not a big deal. In terms of quantity, once it's cut, it's about 150 to 200 grams. And you can see here, if you have the flat, streaky bacon, it doesn't look great. And that's going to have an impact on your final product. What you want is this nice and neat one, but I only have the pancetta, so I'll be using this one. It's not a problem. All right, so we've talked about the quiche pan. We've made the short crust. We talked about the Migaine and the filling. I've showed you as well the garnish and the weight and how to cut. And now it's time to bring everything together. We're going to be rolling the short crust, line the mold, put the filling, and bake. So what do we need here for the roll? A nice large surface, nice and clean, rolling pin. I've got my short crust, a little bit of extra flour. You can prepare your bench by throwing or dusting the place with a little bit of flour. You can put some flour as well on your rolling pin. A lot of people like to do that as well. And then we're going to place our short crust on here, and we're going to start rolling. Okay. Now this is 1 hour. This is 1 hour in the fridge. It's got the nice consistency. If it's 2 hours or more, even overnight, you're gonna have to leave this outside of the fridge at least 20 minutes time for it to kind of regain that kind of soft consistency. So here, if I take my rolling pin, I can already roll. You can see that dent. But now let's zoom in. Let's put a proper workshop and let's get started. Now for the rolling, all what we need to do is to make a kind of a circle, and the ideal size is about 3 millimeters, which is very thin. A good thing when you blind bake, even if it's a bit thicker, it doesn't really matter. So if it's a bit buttery, make sure it doesn't stick, and that's your bench on here. Nothing sticks, it's very important. And the only thing I can tell you with the rolling pin, you start from the middle, so you can make your dent like that. You can see the dent in here. And then you typically push outwards. Okay, so I'm making a shape on here, and I'm gonna go and push outwards. What you don't want to do, so some people are doing, you start pushing on the side and pressing and rolling on the side, because when you do that, what's gonna happen, you're gonna have the edges are gonna be super thin, and the middle is gonna be thick. So you want always to keep the sides here thicker and always work from the middle bit on here. Okay, so I'm doing a shape, I'm turning, and I'm just gonna go. I'm not an expert at rolling at all. And the good thing with that dough is that it is quite forgiving. You can work it slowly, you know, you turn a little bit, you roll. And I'm gonna keep on going like that until it starts to get quite thin. So we get a bit of a shape, okay? As I said, I'm not a pro at rolling. You see, it's not exactly a circle, but when I'm taking my dish here, you can see how there's space in here all around. You can't see really, but there is, you know, a few centimeters at here, at the bottom, and on the other side towards me. That's enough. That is a bit soft for my comfort zone here. It's been 1 hour. This is why 2 hours is good. You want your dough to be really cold, because now by the time I'm doing this, things is getting really soft, and the dough itself is becoming really difficult to work with. And I don't even know. You see if I'm going to be able to put it on my rolling pin on here, okay? So then I've got my dish on here. I'm going to put it on. What I've got my bit on here, up. I'm going to put this on here, and I'm going to start to tuck this on the inside. So what I've done here is been really purposely sloppy, so that you can see, even if you don't do the right thing at home, you haven't really let the dough to rest properly, it's soft, it's hard to work with, it's not exactly centered, you still can make something. What's important on here is when you have your dough here at the bottom, all along, you really want to tuck it in and press the edge of the dough, so it's really, so that your short crust goes straight down like that, all around. And really kind of follows the shape of your mold, and these ceramic ones, they're really not super handy. Okay, so you can go around, and once you have, you know, your dough that is sucked in everywhere, we're going to be cutting the excess. So as you can see, it doesn't look great, but the most important is that I'm following the guidelines of really tucking the dough properly, and I can arrange with my finger, and even if I've got some excess, I can now, you know, use my rolling pin on here to kind of cut the excess. You can use a knife, and you see that rolling pin is really one of these cheapo things. So I'm really making it hard for myself in here, but I just want to show you that it's always possible regardless. We're going to keep this extra dough for something else. And you see now, I've got something much neat, and I'm going to keep on working now to have a kind of a nice outline and the same thickness around everywhere. So I'm using my finger, and I'm going around, and now I'm going to, you know, pay more attention of following each shape with my finger, going around. So now to finish, in order to make things a little bit more tidy, you see this little shape that I've done here is with the back of the knife. What I'm doing, I'm taking all the excess of dough that's going like this, all these untidy bits, and I'm taking a knife, and I'm making these little marks to really almost make like an edge so that the dough doesn't fall. And that's a little trick you can use, okay? So we're going to go around and make this little edge like this. It's going to support the dough nicely. So there we have it. You see, I've been working with less than ideal condition. I did not rest the dough properly. The pastry was way too warm. I didn't center it. I plonked it on there. It was a nightmare to work with, but it didn't break. There was no holes. I still managed to put it into my mold. I didn't even put butter in my mold. Sometimes you can put butter and flour to help for the stickiness, but there's a lot of butter in here. But at the end of the day, this is the end result, and it's fine. You know, when you're at home, it's not a problem. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make some little holes at the bottom of the pastry there. So the docking is because we're going to be blind baking. It's also used in classic time when you don't blind bake, is to allow the heat to come through the pastry, and to avoid a kind of a big bubble to form at the bottom. If you don't make these little holes, when you blind bake, the bottom here with the heat is going to start to balloon up, and you're going to have this side that's going to cook, and you're going to have an uncooked part on here, even if you have weight. So unless you got something super, super heavy, it's going to try to balloon up. When you make these little holes like this, it kind of prevents this. So don't go too hard, don't make massive holes, little fork, and then we're going to put some beads, and I'm going to show you how to blind bake. But before we do so, this is very warm. So I'm going to put this in the fridge, or you can even put this for 10 minutes in the freezer to firm things up. Perfect, so my dough has been resting 10 minutes in the freezer, now it's nice and firm, and we can easily work with it. All what we need for the blind baking is a piece of parchment paper or kitchen paper, baking paper that's going to go in the oven, and here are some beads, baking beads. These are ceramic beads. All right, let's go. So remember, blind baking is great when you have a very high pan or where you have something that does not diffuse the heat very well, such as this pan. Like this, you're sure you're not going to get a soggy bottom. Your crust is going to be pre-cooked. And this is quite thick. Remember, we've been a bit sloppy. It's not 3 millimeters. 3 millimeters is very, very thin, which helps the cooking. So blind baking, if you're beginning with quiches, it's a good, it's a good thing to do. So we've got our paper on here, the beads. Yep. Everything. Now we're going to spread them out and make sure, you see I've got some that's going under there, and make sure it's really going all the way on the edges so that nothing is left to chance. You want some weight, and if you have more, you can put more. We really want to have that dough stick to the bottom because you're going to want to balloon up, and we don't want that. Once this is ready, you're going to preheat the oven, fan forced on at 200 degrees Celsius, and we're going to be putting this like that in the oven for 10 minutes. You can push it to 15 minutes. Typically 10 to 12 minutes is enough, and then I'll show you the result. My shortcrust is now out of the oven. I'm going to carefully remove the beads so we can have a look at it, and be careful, it's very hot. Now if you wonder, by the way, how I do that, I take the whole paper, I've put it in a packet like this, and I'm taking the packet on here, and I'm pouring the hot beads into a thick bowl so it doesn't break or anything like that. So how do I now blind bake? And this is how it looks like. But what I want to show you here is the edges. Remember what I said about the gluten in the flour and the kneading and how your dough can shrink a lot? Well, look at this. There's been no shrinkage whatsoever. So yes, it looks rustic, it's not perfect, but because we've been following these simple, basic concepts and techniques, it works. We've managed to create shortcrust by hand, we've rolled it even though it was sloppy, we've blind baked it, and nothing has moved. So from here, we're going to leave this to cool down on the griddle here, on the cooling rack. You leave your oven at 200 degrees, and we're going to prepare the Migaine, the garnish, and then assemble everything together. Now the first thing we're going to do here is the bacon. So I've got a carbon steel pan, medium to high heat. I've waited a few minutes for this to come to temperature, and I'm just going to really quickly pan fry my bacon first. This is a smoked bacon. So I'm just going to adjust a little bit because, remember, it's very thin, so you don't want to overdo it. It's going to be really kind of chewy. So 2 to 3 minutes. As you can see, what I've done here, I've rendered the fat, and that's all I want. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to follow straight with, remember, these cured pancetta. And you're going to see it. So that looks better. That's the lardon, but you're going to see it cooks differently. So you see, when it's cured, it gets translucent, the fat is melting, and the meat here is getting very tough very quick. So this is good for a carbonara or Italian pastas, but for a quiche like this, not ideal. So even after a minute like this, I'm done. I'm going to take them out and put it with the rest. To finish, finally, we've got the Migaine. So I've got my 3 eggs that I'm going to beat in here, okay, into an omelette, slightly, and I'm going to follow with the cream, 300 ml of good quality organic cream, and I'm going to do a bit of seasoning, some salt and pepper. So I'm going to add maybe a little bit of salt on here, and then some pepper. Now, some French recipe which are not the classic exactly. There's milk in there to make it lighter, and there's also some nutmeg, but here we're just going with the traditional. So now that I've done all this, my base is at the right temperature. I can put it on my chopping board, and we're going to just start with the bacon that I've got. So as you can see, the problem with the flat pieces of bacon is that there's no height compared to these lardons. So you can use your hand, but you know, I'm going to try to use this. It's better by hand, actually. You can... And now for the final stage, we're going to add the Migaine over. And what's important here before you add, you need to think that if you have a flat garnish like this, and you got a lot of filling, you're going to end up with a layer of bacon at the bottom, and the top of your slice is going to be just that cream and eggs. So this is why I don't have too much, because I just want, see there, so typically I would say that when you still see the bacon like that, you'll be good. Because you know that you're going to have that look. So 300 ml, I'm going to put everything because I don't want to throw it away, but you see if I put a 300 ml in there, it starts to float around. Now I'm not going all the way up on here because it balloons up. When you cook a quiche, it's going to raise in volume. So always be conscious of these little things. Now let's talk about the final bit, which is of course cooking times and temperature. And now to finish, of course, temperature and baking time. Remember what I said, it depends on your quiche pan. If you use metal quiche pan, there's no need to blind bake. Anything else, typically high profile, ceramic like this, you want to blind bake. If you're using a metal quiche pan, the temperature and cooking time is as follows. Temperature 200 degrees Celsius for the first 10 minutes, then you reduce your heat to 180 degrees Celsius and you continue to cook for 20 minutes. For that size, for roughly 24 to 26 centimeter type of quiche pan. Once you blind bake, because we've already spent these 10 minutes cooking the crust here, we are going to be starting straight off at about 180 degrees Celsius. But because we're starting at 180, we're going to still spend around 25 to 30 minutes to cook the filling in here. So what's important when you're making a quiche, you stay near your oven. You want to see, especially when it's blind baked, or what you care about is the color. You don't want something too brown at the top. You want these little patches of brown and that's it. The quiche will have to rest afterwards and it will then set. So if it looks like it's not totally ready, don't worry. When the color on the top is right, take it out. That's what I would say. So I'm going to put mine in the oven. It's set to 180 degrees Celsius, fan force on. And I'm going to cook it, and when it's ready, I'll show you the result. And there we have it. This is the result after 26 minutes. This is the color that I like, this kind of nice and blonde color. And if it's a little bit soft at the top, don't worry, because we now need to leave the quiche to rest and cool down to room temperature. And during that time, it's going to be setting. You do not want to overcook your quiche. Do not go until it's totally brown, because it's going to, if it overcooks, it's going to get watery. Sometimes you can get some kind of water bubbles inside. You don't want that. So my advice, never overcook. Let it rest, be patient, wait for it to be coming at room temperature, and then you can start to cut it open, have a slice, and enjoy this with friends, with family, with a glass of wine, on a terrace, being autumn or spring. It is always a welcome addition. To be honest, this is exactly what I'm going to do. So if you've been following the workshop from the beginning till the end, and you've made that quiche, maybe your first quiche Lorraine, congratulations. And I'm glad to let you know that this is actually just the very first quiche. This is part of our latest course called Quiches for All Occasions, where we really deep dive in the world of French quiche making, exploring all kinds of short crust. I think we've got 8 different ones. We've got gluten-free short crust, we've got dairy-free short crust, we've got light short crust, we've got olive oil-based short crust, we've got gourmet short crust, and we're using these to make an entire range of quiches, vegetarian quiche, meat quiches, chicken quiches, seafood quiches, and also one that is totally dairy-free, gluten-free, I think with salmon and plenty of options. So if you're interested to learn more about quiche and become a master, just look in the video description, there's a link, it will take you to our course page, and you're going to be able to see all the juicy pictures, all the things that's involved in the course, the kind of stuff that we're going to be learning. And we're running a promotion for the occasion until Good Friday, because almost quiche week, I think, coming up, and you're going to be able to buy that course at a heavily reduced price. Honestly, everybody that took that course has been absolutely happy. There's so much things to learn, and it's fun. Making quiche, it's fun, and you can eat it. So I hope you enjoyed that workshop. It's a bit long-winded, but I really wanted to make this to give you all the information, so at least you know how to make a proper quiche Lorraine, and it's gonna work every single time. Okay, I'll see you next time for another video or workshop on the French Cooking Academy. Take care all, enjoy the quiche, and see you there. Bye.
Whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry.